I knew I wanted to sign up for something, but actually I did have a lot of hesitation at the beginning of the year. Like, it's February and I only just signed up for it. Whereas I almost feel like I either needed time to grieve, or maybe I thought I'd made the wrong choice. Maybe the world was telling me not to do it, because I'm surprised that it wasn't, I had this happen in November and then in December I was like, right, get me a race in January. But I didn't feel that way. But that said, I went to the trails recently and I just was like, yes, have missed this. I am back on this, like, let's go for it. And yeah, so I've picked the Bryce Canyon 50K in Utah, which I've never been to Bryce Canyon, but I've heard a lot about it. And I thought, you know what, why not go for something spectacular? Again, keeping that fun element. It's not about how fast, but just being able to appreciate that experience.
Welcome back to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. We are Jess and BJ, your hosts, and we're on a mission to create a better world. We believe the better world that we all dream of seeing lives within us right now and will be realized through our thoughts, actions, and words from this moment forward. This podcast began in 2016, just 1 month before leaving everything behind and hitting the road to raise awareness that living a more vibrant life is within reach for all. In the 6 months we lived on the road and the almost 6 years of engaging in conversations with guests, we have realized that there are not enough weeks on the calendar to share the stories of people pursuing similar missions in the world. And our guest today is one of those spectacular citizens. Tina Muir is a former professional runner who realized great success at the marathon and half marathon distances, but perhaps garnered even more attention when she quit running to attend to her health. Tina created Running for Real, the largest global community of runners contributing and connecting positively to the world around them. She is the host of the Running for Real podcast and more recently co-host of Running Realized, a podcast that holds a mission to explore running culture as a vehicle to realize its full potential and one that asks us all to be a part of the solution. Tina is recognized as one of the lead climate activists in the running space and in 2021 began collaborating with the United Nations on climate change initiatives. Tina is a runner, mom, and entrepreneur who plays many roles within a day and holds decades of experiential knowledge that we trust will flow naturally as the three of us connect and hold the highest intention for our communities at large. Tina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a nice intro and nice start to this. I love it.
Well, it's there's so much depth to what you do, and maybe you can relate to this as a podcast host. When you have that, it's almost like harder to encapsulate all of that into, any kind of intro, because you're so much more than the roles that you play. You're so much more than a runner. You're so much more than what we're even going to be able to discuss in this hour. But, my intention is to honor our guests because we know your time is precious and we really appreciate you being here. So I'm psyched to dive in with you.
No, I'm excited too, and thank you for that. Although I have to say before we begin, I keep staring over your shoulder. You've got the plant that I recently killed, and so I'm wondering how you managed. I keep staring at
Which
it.
one?
Like, how did you keep that one alive?
Yeah, it's tricky. This little guy.
That one is the one the only one I've killed. And so I want to spend this hour asking you how you keep those alive, because I can't do it, apparently.
So I move plants around. This guy, I just moved him here. I haven't quite figured him out yet, because he almost died. And I think it's because I overwatered him and then didn't give him enough daylight. So then I put him in this other area that has daylight, but not like direct sun. And then and now he's got new growth. And so
amazing. I can see it.
Yeah, new growth. Yeah. And you can see it's like growing kind of weird because he's had some tough times. And so I think the key is in having daylight, not necessarily direct sun, and don't overwater it, because that was
my mistake. Yeah.
Oh, it does not want to be overwatered. Yeah. So
I didn't mean to hijack your conversation. It kept drawing my eye because I still have guilt over killing mine.
That's so funny because I just put it here and I had this whole conversation with it. I got it next to another plant. Like, okay, you've got community, you've got support. Like,
I love it.
So we'll see what happens. But the the new life is there. And so I'm going to watch the watering, but I think that's key. Like, don't overwater it.
Okay, I'm going to consider you my guru of houseplants from now on.
Okay. You got to talk to them too. Do you have like conversations and things with them?
Only the ones that sometimes struggle. Like I have a fern that's it goes up and down in how well it looks, and I'm like, come on, little guy. That's the only one I really talk to.
Well, what if?
But maybe I should.
Yeah, like celebrate their victories, right? You see that new life. I always like look at the new life and celebrate the victories of the new life.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I love that. I mean, I do get excited for the new life, but I don't tell it. So maybe I need to start telling it.
I mean, we do it to ourselves, right? We can gloss over so easily celebrating our victories.
So true.
Right?
So true.
So, all right. And I know we're going to get into the mental piece of things because I know you've done a lot of work around that, and you also have a mental training program. You've had some mental training weeks on the podcast, but I think we'll be remiss if we don't back up the truck and just share with us your backstory in case anybody's been living under a rock and they don't know who Tina Muir is. It's time to wake up, people.
Thank you. Well, it's funny you said earlier about how we're so much more than, the identities that we hold or the things that you can bring up in a bio. And it is funny with both of you and what I do, that aren't in those traditional roles of like an accountant or a teacher, trying to explain to people when they're like, what do you do? And you're like, well, I do this and this and this and this and this and this. And they're like, and that's a job? I'm like, well, yeah, it's just like not one thing. It's lots of things. And so it's quite hard to describe that. And so I was thinking about that earlier when you were saying that, because we do try and put ourselves into boxes, and it's it's fun to kind of break out of that and say, we don't have to just say one thing, but it is also hard to describe what you do. But that said, backing up, I started running as a teenager. I don't really remember ending up good at it. I just remember ending up on the cross-country team. So it wasn't like this thing that I said to my parents when I was 5, I'm going to start running and I love running. I always knew I was competitive. That was definitely clear. My parents acknowledged that. But I ended up on the cross-country team and improved pretty rapidly once I was there. And then I became good enough to get offered scholarships to the US. And I was thankful that I had a coach who was, against my will, held me back a lot and didn't let me run very much. I was running maybe less than half of what typical kids at my level were running. And at the time that annoyed me because I wanted more. I wanted to see what I could do. But every time I'm interviewed, I always thank Brad, because without him, I wouldn't be here, because I would have run myself into the ground as a teenager, been another one of those kids. I ended up going to college and being very successful there, because as it should be, getting into my 20s, that was when I could really perform and start to head towards seeing what I was capable of. And I continued that through my 20s, eventually becoming a professional runner. And as you said, doing well in the marathon and half marathon. Do you want me to go any further, or do you want to? Because it starts to take a turn soon. Do you?
Yeah, let's take the turn. Okay. Yeah.
So then the big turn to the story was that shortly after running my lifetime goal, which I'd been aiming for 14 years, running for Great Britain in a world championship, and then running a personal best, and then another personal best in the marathon, I randomly quit one day. Done. Didn't know if I would ever run again. Took 3 months of absolutely zero exercise, and I loved it. And I really felt like I needed it. I was burned out. Ended up pregnant 10 weeks after stopping intentionally. That wasn't a surprise. That was the plan. And now I'm back into running with 2 daughters, with a whole new approach to sport and life, and have also started my business, Running for Real, which is about supporting other runners through their journeys, as I did the many, many years of my own journey and my own life being the priority. I want to put others first. It's kind of it in a nutshell.
So when you walked away from running, was that with an intention to, because I've heard you talk about like to attend to your health, but in your mind, was that also moving you towards motherhood?
Yeah, it was definitely a two-part decision. The first thing was I was 28 at the time. I was well aware that I probably should get a move on with starting a family, because I knew that the longer I waited, the more difficult it could be on my body. And also, there was the health factor that I didn't have a period. And so who knows how long that would take. I'd gone 9 years without having a period, which, while it was common, I knew it wasn't good for my body. And so I wanted to give myself enough time so that if we did end up needing to take lots of different paths and lots of different steps to get there, we wouldn't be at a point where it was too late. So there was two elements to it. And then, as I said, I was burned out. I was getting to the point where I despised what I was doing. I'd be in a morning run thinking, I've got to run again later today. So before I'd even finished one, I was already dreading the next. So there was the element of mental and physical burnout within my body, I think.
And were you, in your professional career, were you seeking out mental skills training, like sports psychologist, and during that time?
I've always been fascinated with psychology. That's been something my whole life. I just love the concept of working on your mind, about it not being just about, extinguishing fires when they're happening, but using it to be better humans, to grow constantly. I really believe in therapy. I mean, I wish everyone in the world could have therapy, but I did have a sports psychologist who I worked with. She was a critical piece of my success. I always said in the final few years, my coach / husband, my strength training coach, and my sports psychologist were like the three legs of the stool that allowed me to like step up and achieve that potential. But within those sessions, we mostly talked about what was going on in races as opposed to what was going on internally. And I did tell her when she was very supportive and still is one of my best friends through this transition. And I don't work with her as a therapist anymore, but she's still a very close friend. So it was a part of it, but not something I allowed myself. I think it was more that I was scared of what I would find if I dove into the underneath while I was trying to perform.
Yeah, we see that. It's like we don't know what that is. It's known, but it's unknown. It's been layered. It's been layered over. So it's sort of like uncomfortable to bridge ourselves into that space, even though we know it's really good for us and we can have an amazing, breakthrough or come to some resolution. But it's the mind just doesn't know what that's like. And the unfamiliarity is almost too scary. And I guess I'm speaking, for myself or some athletes I work with, and you see what it could be on the other side. But, again, the unknown, right? We have no library. We have no reference for this point. So in that relationship, do you now see how beneficial having that support team around you is for athletes that are coming up that maybe you work with or see or interview?
I mean, I think all of us need a support network of some kind. Obviously, it's varying levels. If someone is doing an exercise for a hobby, do they need to pay $200 an hour to see a sports psychologist? If you could afford it, if you have the privilege of being able to do that, amazing. But I think we can find each of those roles and that support system within our lives. And maybe it isn't. I often talk to people within our community about it doesn't have to even be someone you know or can connect with. It can be, they say you become the people you surround yourself with. Well, listening to people in podcasts, not saying, myself, but Brene Brown is a huge person for me. So anything she does, I suck it up. And I feel like she has good influence on my life with the lessons that she has and the things that she can teach me. So, I think the support system and having those people to dig deeper is critical. Especially for people who are in a sport like mind with running. I mean, I guess most sports actually, what is portrayed is this like dig down, grit your teeth, get through it, and as I said, I was afraid to see what was underneath. I think that's quite often the case, that there's a breakdown before you make progress and before you push through the other side and get to your potential. And most people who take their sport seriously, or athletes, are afraid to give up and take that time for the breakdown, even if it means getting to the other side. I think it's kind of like choosing to take an injury, and even if it's a mental injury. And I think, I wish in many ways that I would have like seen what could have happened had I taken that approach earlier, before I reached that burnout point.
Mm. And then after you walked away from the sport, did you ever go in there to that treasure chest of the unknown? Like, did you like traverse like what we would call like the dark night of the soul, or burning in the fire, which we talk pretty candidly about our own, burning in the fire all the time. And I think that we live in a world now, thank goodness, we live in a world now, at least the world that I am aware of, that I live within, is that it's more safe to talk about this now. And so did that go along with your physical healing? Did you find like a mental healing? Did you find that you were able to crack open that, like I said, that treasure chest of whatever was in there?
Well, I think it was you, BJ, who said earlier that it's kind of layers. You got to work through them. And I think I broke through the superficial ones at first. But I actually have often said that first period of healing, where my body was physically healing, mentally, I kind of skated through it in a way I shouldn't really have been able to do. And maybe that was the work of the sports psychologist that had built a foundation enough to where I could get through those easier levels, maybe. So I didn't really have that much trouble at the beginning, but I did find that I was able to get into those more once my daughters were born. I began that progression more. I think I've really seen the difference since my second daughter was born. The first daughter, Bailey, it was more a thing of like, I am not gonna, it was more like a determination about what I didn't want her to see as a girl, as a female coming into this world. And then I feel like I've gone deeper into more of the drive to always accomplish, achieve, be doing. We were talking about earlier about discomfort, and I've always found it hard to just be and not be doing things all the time. My husband yesterday was saying to me, I feel like I have a post-it note and you have a novel of things to do. And I think that's the same. I'm still working through that, trying to like be okay with not having 300 things at the same time. So I don't know. Am I in the treasure chest? I might just still be at the lock. So
yeah, I mean, I think that there's always, I'm like reaching behind me right now because I think my to-do list is back here. Because of course I was trying to tidy up because somebody was coming over. God forbid they see. Oh, it's not here. It must be over there. But literally I said, my to-do list looks like a Shakespearean scroll. And BJ's is a to-do list with like perfect
on a sticky note.
On a sticky note. Yeah.
Little boxes that I can
That's
check.
So funny that you just said that. Yeah. And I can really relate to that for sure. But I think that there's always another level. I think there's always another level. There's always another level. Like our environment is really strong. And we're also, you're doing it, we're doing it. We're having conversations with people where we're going deep. We're talking about big issues. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about the state of the world. We're talking about things that, will start to crack us open a little bit. And I think that there's always higher levels of, for the lack of a better word, kind of that purification of who we are and what we carry through life. Because you had to do a lot of armoring up, right? Like you'd wake up, I have to do the other, armor up, get up and go. This is your job, do it. And, I grew up in New England, and that's kind of a badge of honor there, right? It's at least I'm not going to generalize everybody that lives in New England, but for me, it was like, it was soldier on. It was, you do for you, and you make sure you're good. And I think we just soldier through the world, and we carry a lot. So whether it's something that, we picked up when we were little, or something we saw on the news one day, we see devastating things all the time, and we still have to, go to the bank and go to the grocery store. And so I feel like we're soldiering up all the time, and there's always layers, but perhaps we get better at it. Perhaps it doesn't take us down as much as we see those things get revealed, or feel them even more appropriately, right? Feel them move through us.
Yeah. I feel like that is one thing over time. I at least have become better at sitting in I've always been a fixer. That's been one of my things that I've been really trying to work on. And quite often my husband will say, like, I don't need you to give me an answer. I just need you to listen to me. That's something I've really struggled with. But I think a lot of that is that whole approach of like, okay, next thing to get done. I've got to, like, as you said, soldier on through the world. Okay, what's your problem? Okay, what can we do to fix this? And trying to just say, okay, this isn't going to figure itself out right away. Let people figure things out in their own time. You don't have to, force them into things just so that you feel like you're doing something towards it. So it's tough though.
Yeah. How are your daughters helping you with that process?
Well, I actually do have a funny story about something my daughter said while I was home in England. I was having a discussion with my mum one day. I can't even remember what it was about. And I can be one of, again, that fixer, kind of quite pushy with trying to make people do what I think they should be doing. And she came over to me and said, Mummy, and she's four now. She was 3 at the time. Mummy, you need to let Nanny make her own decision. It's her choice. And at first I was like, oh, I am. But then I was like, actually, that is exactly the lesson I want you to be learning. And you are right. And so I said to her, you know what, Bailey, you're right. I do need to let Nanny make her own choice. And so, yes, they are that constant reflection back of the messages that, I so badly want them to learn. They keep me humble with those within myself. And then I actually think more than anything, what comes to mind is just, and Jess, you'll understand this well, that I'm so scared that my daughters are going to lose that like silliness and the zest for just having fun in the moment, and getting sucked into that to-do list, got to be serious thing. That they remind me that, even if they're at the dinner table and they're doing something that irritates me for a second, I might be like, you know what? Let them be silly. They're 4 and 1, like this. So it's mostly that, a reminder to just be in the moment, and that these right here are the moments I'm going to miss, rather than, the big trips somewhere here or there. So yeah, they're definitely helping me a lot. How do
you, it sounds like you're on this path that, well, you are interrupting the process, interrupting this thought, because what the good solution is, your mind, and I feel this all the time with Jess, like, just don't put the spatula there. It works better on this side of the counter. Like if you put it over here, and that's the story and commentary that's going on in my head, but I know it's not going to serve any like beneficial purpose. But I'll speak for myself. Understanding that you can pause and you can interrupt this thought pattern just by taking a breath or cueing into something that's happening now. I used to wear an elastic around my wrist where I would just, snap it just to kind of wake me out of the habits that I was in. Is there anything that's worked for you that, because it seems like it's pretty simple, not simple for you, but it seems like you're onto it now, where you're like, oh, I don't have to say that, or my daughter's saying the exact right thing right now.
If I'm making it sound simple, then I am definitely saying the wrong things, because it's not easy at all. And the exact example you just mentioned right there, I have the same discussion with my husband a lot, where I'm like, if you do it this way, it's actually quicker. And he's like, I don't need you to tell me which way to do it. So I definitely get still caught up in that a lot. So I see that's a perfect example though, right? Because what you see, whereas I'm like snapping my invisible elastic band on my wrist constantly, like scolding myself, like, oh, you missed it again, like, oh, that was another opportunity. But then what other people see is I'm actually, like you said, on that path. And the same with both of you, I'm sure, and everyone listening. That said, what do? I mean, I think it's just, I honestly think it's the work with the therapist. I feel like every hour I get with a therapist maybe increases that time to react by a 100th of a second. And so now I can catch like some of the thoughts, or maybe if I'm chewing something when I'm about to say something, that gives me enough time to chew, gives me enough time to catch it. So yeah, I don't have any, like, I love that elastic band idea, but I think it's just, the work with the therapist is slowly, like, his voice is just in my ear. And I haven't seen him in a month, and I actually wrote in my journal this morning, I can feel it because his voice has faded. And so I'm seeing him next week and I'm excited for it. But yeah, I wish I had a better tip, but I feel like I'm way at the beginning of the process.
Well, that's the, I'll just say what I just observed from what you just said is repetition. Like you're constantly seeing your therapist, so repetition of the voice in the head. And this is exactly what we do as athletes. There's no secret workout or secret food that you take in or whatever, secret coach. It's like, it's this repetition of I know, similar things over and over and over. And I'm glad that you pointed that out, because people see us or connect with us and they're like, oh, you guys live this, amazing, beautiful life, and everything must be going right. And we have challenges and we work through them. We just interrupt the process and we're able to catch ourselves, but it's not 100%. I love the 100%. Like it just gets a little bit better with every experience you have. Yeah.
And I love what you said a word that's like one of my favorite words, and I don't ever want to forget living this, is silliness. Because I definitely, being a yoga teacher and teaching meditation and, being an endurance athlete, like I got really serious. I don't know what happened. I got really serious. Like, like 5 years ago, I was just like so serious about everything. Everything was so serious. And we ended up getting this puppy, who we still have. And he taught me that silliness, right? We don't have children, but this puppy taught me that silliness. And so we've kind of brought that into our interrupting our patterns, right? You and your husband, sounds like you guys have patterns. We should have brought him onto this conversation. We could have changed the whole podcast. But one of the things I try and do is and it's a risk because I don't know if I'm going to, send him into anger or whatever, but like, I'll try and bring that silliness in, like, okay, you're like, okay, control-y. Like that, like I'll do things where I'm trying, like, oh, did you see me just trying to control that? Or, like we'll try and bring some silliness in. And then other times, like we pulled up to the pool the other day, we were having this super unproductive, like, cyclical conversation that we've had since we were 25 years old. And I said, oh, we're just in that weird, unproductive blah. So let's stop it. And it was weird energy, and then it faded. But it's that acknowledgement of it. And I think that when we can plug in a little bit of serious in there, like, oh my God, I'm trying, like, BJ, you're trying to control where I put the spatula. Like, come on. The earth is still rotating. That's the important thing. Like, the planets are still aligned. Like, nothing's crashing into the sun. That's what's important. Not where the spatula is.
Duly noted.
You're exactly right. No, I feel you, BJ. I struggle not to say something like, why would you not want something that's quicker or better? And but anyway, you're exactly right, Jess, that you need to like you said, what is the point? A few seconds saved, or one spoon less washed, or whatever it may be, is just not worth it. But yeah, that silliness, like especially I feel so sensitive about, again, we're kind of in this society where we just have to plug away, get through, survive. And especially in the turmoil that the world's going through right now, everything is very serious. But as you said, there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of light. There's a lot of things to be, that are beautiful in this world, as you said. But, if we don't keep that just fun in there, and not fun like let's go do something fun, but like the sporadic moments that came up. Again, I mentioned Brene Brown. I remember hearing her talk about her daughter once and how she was dancing in the middle of a store and was just like, come on, Mom, join in. And Brene said, I remember thinking to myself, this is it. This is the moment. You either decide whether you shame her without shaming her by saying like, oh, I'm just going to watch you, like not joining in, or you act silly in front of everyone around you, but you show your daughter to be silly, have fun, do what feels right. And she was like, I did it and I'm so proud. So I always keep that in my mind of, you know, and I've had people like, I remember I was in Trader Joe's once and a woman was like, get it, Mom. And I was so embarrassed for a second, but I was like, you know what? Like, I'm never seeing that person again. Or maybe, you know, they might know me as the mum that dances with her kid, but that taught my daughter keep being silly. And me too. So yeah, that's something I'm very sensitive about.
It kind of reminds me, what's coming up is this conversation we've had with Sally McRae. I don't know if you know. Yeah, Sally.
Yeah, I know Sally.
Yeah, and she was talking about like, I can't remember the context of it. I think it was like a race or, you know, when you don't complete a race or something. And she was talking about how like, it's just your pride. It's just your pride that's hurt. And so in that moment when we're going to do something silly, you know, I love that, shaming her without shaming her. Like, oh, I'm just going to watch you. Like, it's what is holding us back from that? It's this idea of who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to act. And really, if everybody was just dancing a little bit more in Trader Joe's, like, wouldn't all that energy just lighten up? And so I think that when we, like you and Beej were talking about, like getting into that, interrupting the process and seeing like, what is really at risk here? Okay, it's my pride. Like my pride, like, and so what do I want to pride myself with? Being appropriate, you know, and being a soldier in the grocery store? Or do I want to pride myself on connecting with my daughter and dancing and being free right now? Because isn't that ultimately what we're all seeking is freedom?
Exactly. Yeah. Beautifully said. So true.
Okay. I want to stay on the fun train. We're not going to climate change yet. I want to stay on the fun train. And although there is a lot of hope there and there's a lot of good things that we can do, but can we talk about ultra training? Because you're now on the trails and I know you weren't able to do the 50K that you were planning on doing, but it sounds like you signed up for one in the spring. So coming from, you know, focused road training for so many years, marathon, half marathon, pavement, and now you're on the trails, like tell us about that experience of being out there and training for something that you haven't done before, like an ultra.
Yes. This is a big part of that fun piece and almost getting as far away from the old version of running as I can. I mentioned earlier about, you know, I wish I'd taken that time to break through the mental barrier earlier, but right now, even though I've broken through that space, got into that chest of mine, I have no interest in going back to that because I know, at least for me, what it involved, and maybe I will someday, but for now, I just want to chase the fun. And so, trails is something that's always, I've always been curious about it. I was always, actually my best distance, if you want to call it that, in school was cross country. The worse the conditions, the better I did. If it was, I mean, in England, we have cross country courses that are like, you have to run through a lake and a river, and it's very much like a trail race. Oh, not a lake, sorry, I should say. Just like a few feet in a creek, and then you might have to climb up the other side, which is slick mud, you know, so mud all over you. And I always loved that stuff. So trails had always intrigued me, but I was too scared of the typical thing. I don't want to roll my ankle. So I didn't do it for the longest time.
Same thing.
Is that you won't go on it now, or you never used to?
I would never before because I'm so invested in triathlon, like road stuff, like I don't want to twist my ankle. Because I know, you know what? I know I'm going to have an awesome time. I know I'm going to be bombing down the trail, and I know, I don't know. I think I know that what's going to happen, but continue on because it sounds like.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And even now, when I'm running in the trails, I still envision myself falling over most runs. I can't like seem to push that thought out of my head. I think it's just that fear factor. But the ironic thing with both you and I saying that, though, is that once you start doing trails, you actually strengthen your ankles. So then you get up, like, it's just quite funny that, like, that's the reason we give. But you've just got to break through that little first, beginner part. But so I was really excited to race my first 50K in December. Was it December? Yeah, December or end of November. It was really unfortunate that my daughters tested positive the day before we were leaving. And, we debated whether I went on my own, but we just decided it's just not worth it. So inevitably I ended up having it too. And then so that just kind of put an end to everything. It wasn't a case of like, let's find something else once I was a week behind them. And I just thought, let's just cut our losses and move on. I knew I wanted to sign up for something, but actually I did have a lot of hesitation at the beginning of the year. Like it's February and I only just signed up for it. Whereas I think, I almost feel like I either needed time to grieve or maybe I thought I'd made the wrong choice. Maybe the world was telling me not to do it, because I'm surprised that it wasn't, I had this happen in November and then in December I was like, right, get me a race in January. But I didn't feel that way. But that said, I went to the trails recently and I just was like, yes, have missed this. I am back on this. Like, let's go for it. So I've picked the Bryce Canyon 50K in Utah, which I've never been to Bryce Canyon, but I've heard a lot about it. And I thought, you know what, why not go for something spectacular? Again, keeping that fun element. It's not about how fast, but just being able to appreciate that experience. And so everything I've done, and again, it's been a progression. I did the Disney World Half Marathon as my first postpartum race after my first daughter. And while I enjoyed elements of it, I still couldn't quite fully let go to enjoy it. And so I feel like I'm now more and more on this path of just following the joy. And I'd love to do things like running the Empire State Steps and, maybe even doing one of those donut runs or just it's all about chasing that fun stuff. But trails has been really special. And there's something about being out there for 3 or 4 hours that I've really, really enjoyed and I'm excited about. So, we'll see.
Bryce Canyon is spectacular. It is it's a wonderful, I did the 50-mile one in
done that
2020.
Race. Amazing.
And the 50K course, if it's still the same, will take you through this amazing place called Red Canyon, which you may or may not leave a piece of your soul there. I certainly did. But BJ, you ran the last 20 miles, which she'll be on that piece too. And it is spectacular, super well run race. And I'm so excited for you. What a wonderful entry into, and it's tough. It's a gnarly race. And for me, I mean, that's why I love it. Like I love that gnarliness of nature and just gorgeous. I mean, you're going to feel like you're on Mars and you're going to feel like you're in the deep woods. Like you'll get all the different landscapes and beauty. And that's so wonderful.
Amazing.
So having all this experience training for marathons and things like that, how do you feel like or if any, training will shift or change, like new things that you're going to need to embrace because you're going to be off-road and going longer?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's actually 2 things that I'm doing before that are going to help me prepare for the amount of time on my legs and also just the difficulty component, but not maybe in the traditional sense, and they make it a little bit more challenging as well. So in April, I am running Boston as a guide for a visually impaired athlete. And so he's planning to run between 4 and 5 hours. And then I was also given the opportunity to be a guide for another runner in the Maui Marathon a week later. So I'm doing these back to back because opportunity of a lifetime. I'm not going to come home in between. I'm going to go straight, for one. I don't want to add more flights. And even the Bryce Canyon one is actually a layover on the way back from visiting family. But yeah, so those 2 races are going to be 2 races, 4 to 5 hours back-to-back weekends. So I feel like that in itself is some good practice with the time on my feet, with the pounding. Obviously, roads are a lot tougher on our bodies than trails, so that element will help. But it also, again, makes things a bit more tricky because it means that I have to spend time on the road getting prepared for those so that I don't end up injured. And then it also means that I have to make those the focus to get healthy for those, and then kind of almost like an afterthought think about the 50K. But because I've committed to these and I really want to be there for them both. But no, I mean, again, it sounded right. It felt right. Again, I love that act of service, using my body that can handle training, to be able to give back to the community. So training is not going to be, I think, what traditional ultra training is going to be in many ways. But I'm still alternating my weekends, getting out to the trails. And that, I think, is the, bulk of it, as long as I can keep getting those long runs in and making sure I'm getting those elevation gain practices. I hope I'll be okay.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You'll be fine because you don't live at elevation, right? You're not.
No.
Yeah. You'll be fine.
This isn't at elevation, is it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Uh-oh.
I think the starting line's like 7,000 feet.
Oh dear, I might be in trouble.
Yeah, but if you're flying on a layover, you're going to be in and out like super quick. It won't even affect you.
Okay, that's true.
Yeah, your blood cells.
Well,
yeah, I will.
Well, we'll believe that.
Yeah.
Okay,
you're fine.
Okay. I'm just going to tell myself.
Yeah,
this. I actually have raced at altitude at college a few times, and so I feel like mentally, at least, I know I can do it. It was shorter distances, which makes it more difficult because you obviously anaerobic very quickly, or maybe it is easier. I don't know, but I'm going to use that as a mental trick.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be what you believe it to be, right?
Yeah.
So you can, and I've seen this, so we've seen this so many times. I've experienced it too. Like I went into Bryce just like, it's going to be fine. Like it's going to be fine. And I think for me, it was more of the dry climate than it was the elevation, to be quite honest. That dry climate, it was pretty dry and hot. But no, it's, you know what? The beauty and the power of Mother Nature just superseded any kind of little voice in the head that's like, well, we're at elevation and, all that just minutia, right? It's just, there's something bigger. It's bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of Mother Nature, that's a good little segue. Let's talk about how you got involved with, I want to know how you got involved with United Nations, but also when did, the state of our climate and the state of the health of our earth, when did that begin to, come into your life as something that you hold very close to your heart?
It's always been my dad is very, maybe not like an eco-warrior or environmentalist, but he's always been very aware of certain elements. Like he really hammered home the message of like, don't waste food, like that's bad, for, our world to just, have food be grown or created and then just throw it in the trash. Like he always made that very clear that was not really something he felt good about. And I did take geography classes in school that really made me aware. I quite enjoyed those and made me think about how the actions of one place can affect another place. So those were always in my mind. And then, because of that thing I said about my dad not liking waste, and he was very good at, reusing things or making us get the most out of things. I feel like now within environmental action, everyone has like a particular area, and for me, mine is waste. Like I'm obsessed with waste. Like, not, and so, I definitely feel like I can see where that's come from, but the rest I feel like has been a gradual progression over time where I've become more aware. I've seen the impacts. I mean, we all see the impacts, but working through the almost stages of grief, as coming to terms with what our future could look like. And yeah, I always struggled with the idea that while other nonprofits and organizations could be doing really important work, surely like our planet surviving, I mean, that keeps every single one of us alive. And so I always found that to be the cause that drew my attention the most. And then the more I read up on it, the more I wanted to learn more. And actually, my daughter this morning said, I want to go to Mother Earth camp this summer. And I was like, yes. Not that there is one, but like
you have to create it.
yeah, well, I mean, I did look for like nature-y camps, and I found one that is outside like that, but still, yeah, it's just been over time. I've started to speak up on it more and make decisions, and I really I've heard the director of Council for Responsible Sport, her name's Shelley Villalobos. She was on Running Realize. She talks about the term pro-environmental lens, and that just means like over time, the more you pay attention to it, the more you start to think about all your actions. And so for me, that's just continued to build. And I think as a lot of people don't want to speak out about it, because it does obviously require you putting yourself out there, because myself and anyone who talks about climate is always going to have that opportunity for people to be like, well, you do this, or like, you took a flight to see your parents. How dare you? Like, shouldn't you never fly again and never have your parents fly again? You know, so it is quite, it puts yourself in a risky place. And so, but to me, that always felt like the right thing to do. And I always wanted to be able to look at my daughters in 20 years and be able to say, when they say, what did you do to help? I'll be like, I did all I could. I spoke about it as much as I could. I tried to help others. And so that drives me a lot, is thinking about that conversation with my kids in the same way of like the civil rights movements of the past. You know, most people now would say, oh, I definitely would have been a part of it. But in the reality was most people weren't. So I want to be knowing with the climate thing that I was at least out there doing my best.
Is there any, so with that, like at a basic level, what is like in your awareness? Because with the lens thing, we're basically talking about what we focus on is going to expand. So if we keep focusing on an injury, the injury is going to expand. If we focus on health, we're going to get healthy. If we focus on, we're going to be just fine at elevation, you're going to be fine at elevation when you do Bryce. What can, what are some easy things that you've noticed that you can just tidy up maybe for the environment around you? Like, obviously you're not going to not fly, but there are things that we can just look around and say like, okay, well, this is pretty basic. I can adjust this.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all know that it's not as simple as, you know, do these 3 things and then everything will be great. This is way too big for that. And I think one thing I want to mention before I actually answer your question is that I would hope most listeners have heard this, but like 71% of emissions are coming from 100 companies. So our individual impact is so minimal, it's hard to even speak to. And there's an amazing episode of a podcast called How to Save a Planet where they discuss this. It's called Is Your Carbon Footprint BS? And they discuss it. Like, what impact can you have versus is it really worth it? And it's, I think, a brother and sister who are having a discussion about it, that they look at both of their views. But that said, I think there's a lot of messaging that over the coming years is going to come through telling us you need to do your part. You need to stop buying so much plastic, and you can look at something. I always use the example of yogurt. Someone says, okay, I don't have days to make my own yogurt, so I need to buy yogurt. How do I buy yogurt? Well, I buy it in a plastic tub. Is there any option that's not a plastic tub? Yeah, maybe one of those like little individual ones from, I don't know, Danone, or one of Activia, or I don't know, that's it. Like, that is literally your only option. So how can we make these changes if they don't exist? Same with air travel. If green air travel doesn't exist, how are we supposed to make it? And so I want to just mention that first, because I think that's important, that a lot of blame is going to get pinned on us. And that's that 100 companies trying to like keep the conversation on us. That said, three of the biggest things I would say people can do. The first is to talk about it. I know that's not glamorous. I know that's not exciting, but the more we can have it in conversation with as many people as we can about as many things as we can. It doesn't have to be, going up to a neighborhood event and being like, did you know that 71%, because people are going to shut down, but it could be, here's a chili cook-off. I brought a vegetarian chili just because we're trying to eat a little less meat, something like that, because of, the impact on the environment. Or, taking, walking a child to school, and saying, oh yeah, we're walking just because we're trying to cut back on the amount we're driving, to reduce our emissions. Things like that. Talking about it is number one. And then I would say that, if you have access to public transport, that's another huge one where you can, utilize it. I know that COVID has made that a little bit complicated. And I will admit, when I went to New York during this last year, I used a few taxis when I otherwise wouldn't. Because of that reason, I guess it was the beginning of the pandemic. I wasn't sure about the situation. Maybe the trains weren't even working. I can't remember. But if you can use public transport, and then I would say exploring close to home. We love to travel, and there's nothing wrong with traveling, but most of us have a lot to offer that we haven't even explored yet. And so while you don't have to never travel again, seeing what you can see of your own area, I think, is another way that we can really do something that could allow us to get an experience, but also to have an impact.
I like those. And I think the first one you mentioned talking about is probably the most challenging, because we're getting out of our comfort zone to speak with what maybe is placed upon our heart, but not something we're comfortable expressing, which is, the story of humanity, right? So let's just talk about it a little bit more. I think that's really powerful. But I get the whole. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and it's not like, still sometimes even I talk about it a lot. I still get it wrong. Like I might be talking to a friend and I start to go, and I can see that I can almost see in their head being like, oh, here we go again. Because I've gone in too deep. But yeah, bringing it up keeps it in people's minds, which keeps them expanding their awareness of oh yeah, maybe that weekly delivery, or buying everything I need, or maybe getting an Amazon next day delivery. Actually, yeah, that probably would require quite a lot of air travel, and yeah, that probably would put a lot of pressure on getting things somewhere quickly, and a lot of inefficient methods because they're trying to get it to me fast. So just making people think, even if it's not in that moment.
Yeah. And changing through talking, through our minds are curious. So the more we can talk about it, the more we can have these conversations, the mind's going to be curious. That's going to start to shift the collective mindset. So that the next time that they see that, click here to have it come in less boxes, because we get that option all the time, which is great. And I know that one click isn't gonna save the world, but it's one click that's going to continue momentum in the direction that we desire. And, those 100 companies, they just need to go to therapy and get some mental training skills, and they need to open that treasure chest of pain.
Yes, I don't even want to know what's in their treasure chest.
Yeah, there's a treasure chest of pain there. So, and then how did you get, how does this relationship happen with the UN?
Oh yeah, sorry. So you did that. Well, that, was just an incredible moment where I opened my email up one day and I had an email from someone saying, hello, my name is, I won't say the name, I work for the United Nations, and she had a thing at the bottom that was the logo, and it said Department of da-da-da-da-da, and and the email was at un.org, and
you were like,
yeah, my mouth dropped.
You were like, is this
ground.
legit? Do I need to send $10,000 to some?
If it hadn't have been at un.org email, I think I would have thought it was a joke. And that's what I said. I think I said to her, I was like you want me? Like, what? But that said, they actually had an incredibly successful campaign with what they did with myself and some others in this campaign they did. And I think that the UN has realized that sport is going to be a major path for them to get the message out. I really think that this was a factor that will bring more to show that we can use exercise and use sport to as a vehicle for transporting, some important messages like that. So it was pretty exciting.
And is there anything brewing for this coming year? Any initiatives that you know about that you'll be helping them with that you want to raise awareness on?
Not right now, no. They said they would be in touch in a few months' time, so for now, I don't have anything. We did do a bonus episode of Running Realised a few months ago that they requested, which was about climate change. It was about the COP26 conference. So that was the most recent thing, and that was pretty amazing to be able to do. But yeah, I would love to at some point to do some kind of stunt, or, like there was a guy, Lewis Pugh, who did a swim through the Arctic Ocean, I think, a few months ago. It was like amongst icebergs and ice. It was crazy pictures, but like I'd love to do something maybe not that extreme, but something as part of a awareness building campaign with them. But they've kind of said like, give me your ideas, and I haven't really come up with anything yet. So
I like that. I like that idea. There's something there. So, and as we begin to wrap this up, I do want to touch just back on the mental piece. You had mentioned you journaled this morning, and are there other daily practices that you've carried from, maybe your professional running career, or things that are just become a non-negotiable for you in, that self-awareness of, what thoughts are we indulging? Like what kind of feelings are we moving from? And is that in alignment with who we desire to be? Is there anything that you can share with our listeners that are non-negotiables for you?
Well, firstly, I want to say, just in the spirit of being myself and running for real, even though I would consider these non-negotiables, my answer, like journaling, is the primary one. I don't do it every single day first thing, and sometimes not even at all, because I just want to recognize that, like, for me, there's a certain element of like, yes, something can be a non-negotiable. Is it prioritized? Yes. Is it, I make sure I do that journal before I pick up my phone? Yes. However, if I feel like I need to sleep a bit later and my daughters are now waking up and it's the choice of leaving them in their bed saying mummy or doing my journal, I'm going to pick them, getting them out of their bed. So, but that said, the journaling, so I do, I think it's the 5-minute journal prompts, which are 3 things. I do it all in one go, but 3 things that went amazing the day before, 1 thing that made better, 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things that will make today great, and then I write I am, and I finish the sentence. And sometimes that will be I am tired. Other days it will be I am, and then it goes on for 2 pages. So it really depends on my mental space, how much time I have before I have to get my girls up or get out the door for my run before they wake up or whatever it may be. But that I would say is the biggest one. And I think one that's related is that I would say that I used to always watch shows or do things that it felt like everyone was doing. But I found, for me personally, there's a lot of shows that are too, what I consider, stressful for me. Ozarks being a great example. People love that show and I can't handle it. Like, it's too stressful. So like things like that, not watching it for the sake of being able to talk to people about, did you see Ozarks last night? But instead choosing things that actually allow me, even if they are, repetitive and not very exciting, that allow me to be able to get a good restful night of sleep before bed. I think that's key for me.
Yeah. I mean,
that's key for anyone. I mean, I think we just finished Ozark, and I was like,
we did it.
I need to watch Seinfeld or something, Parenthood or something in between that instead. So
I know, and I don't know what there's like this darkness that's coming out because we don't watch violent shows. We don't, and then here we are going, oh, well, we'll just watch Ozark, and it's disturbing. And I think, to go back to kind of what we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, I am very aware that is leaving impressions on my mind. I am very aware that that is traumatizing my nervous system, So it's like heavy dose of Coach Lasso in there, some Seinfeld, a little meditation, something on YouTube, some chant that's at a high hertz or something. But I love that. I love the 5-minute journal, and I also love what you said. Like sometimes it's like I am tired. Period. End of conversation. Not interested. And I think that is. I hope that gives people permission that this doesn't have to be beautiful, and it doesn't have to be
perfect.
It doesn't have to be perfect, and that we can move forward despite the imperfections or this ideal in our mind of what it needs to be. I think that's huge.
When writing without, am I aware that maybe when I pass, my daughters will read this someday? Yeah, good chance they probably will. But trying to write authentically of what is going through my head, even if it's something that when my daughters in theory could read it someday, they would be like, ooh, Mom, so trying to really write what is in your heart, not write as if you're writing a social media post that people are going to read.
Yes. Yeah. Don't edit the truth. Right? Like if we can't be truthful there, I always tell people just write like nobody's ever going to read it. And I've had people who, don't feel safe about that. And so how do you feel safe? Okay, then have a 5 a.m. burning session in your backyard. Like literally I have had people who are just like, okay, no, then I'm going to be able to do it. And then that helps with their processing. So wherever you are, just meet yourself where you're at. Even if your journal every day says, I am not interested in journaling.
Yeah, and some days it does. I am done here.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. I know that you can be found on 2 podcasts.
And they're both amazing. I've been binging. I've given up Ozark, and I'm now binging on your podcast.
And running alongside you.
Oh, you do those, do you, occasionally?
Yeah.
Occasionally. I don't know how you are able to talk and run. I know that's a question something people ask a lot, but it's got to be an easy pace, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Or easier.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I do keep it very comfortable. And that's what I say the nice thing about those is that it does not matter what pace you are running. And that's the beautiful thing about it, that for me, that very easy, comfortable pace might be 8 to 9 minutes, but for someone else, they could be running 12-minute miles. Someone else could be running 6-minute miles. It really doesn't matter. And so that's the thing I love about these, that we can all be out there together. So yeah, hence the Together Run.
And we'll put links to some of those Together Run podcasts where literally you guys can go running with Tina, no matter your pace. And then also the podcast and all the other amazing resources that we've talked about, and the initiative with the United Nations, that bonus episode that you did and all of that good stuff. So and we're going to be following you. I'm so excited for your Bryce experience, and of course these beautiful opportunities that you have to be a guide at these marathons, so amazing. So thank you so much. It was great chatting with you. Really enjoyed it.
I did too. Thank you so much for all that you give out into this world. We need more people like you. So keep it up. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have no plans of stopping.
I love it.